You okay? I think we're done. Hey whoever's out there, I go by Grumblebug and I am currently reading Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides, and wow, is it not what I expected. If you saw my last video, you'll know that I read a lot of things in July and I want to talk about them all. But I also don't want to overwhelm myself with the editing process or you guys with an hour-long video. So I'm breaking things up, and today I'm going to wrap up the graphic novels that I read in July, as well as some of the comics that I picked up. If you want to start from the beginning, you can click on the link up in the card or down below and check out the fantasy novels that I read last month. I'll start with the chunkiest, I guess, in terms of page count, and that was Wires and Nerve Volume 1 and Volume 2, which is also called Gone Rogue. This is a pair of graphic novels written by Marissa Meyer and illustrated by Doug Holgate and a person whose name I didn't look up. I should look that up. Stephen Gilpin. It is illustrated by Doug Holgate and Stephen Gilpin, and it picks up where the Lunar Chronicles quartet leaves off. That's right, the Lunar Chronicles! They keep going, in graphic novel format. I had no idea. I just stumbled across this at my library. If you haven't read the Lunar Chronicles and you're really concerned about big picture spoilers for that series, go ahead and skip to the next book. The timestamp is in the description and on the screen somewhere. I talked about these briefly in my mid-year freakout tag, where I named them the best sequels that I've read so far this year. Personally, I really enjoyed the Lunar Chronicles. I thought they were fun, the audiobooks were well done, and it wasn't too meaty content-wise, but there's a lot of adventure, and I enjoyed all the characters and their banter with one another. So it was easy, you know? My main complaint was that the ending of the series was pretty simplistic in my mind. Certain elements were wrapped up with a big shiny bow. Everyone is partnered up! How sweet. Inconvenient. But what really frustrated me was how the political upheaval that the group had initiated and all of the logistical fallout of that uprising was all just glossed over. These follow-ups fixed that, in my opinion, or at least it helped a great deal. At the forefront of the story, we have Aiko, who has been sent to Earth to round up all of these mutated wolf soldiers that were deployed by Levana and are still there, just hanging out. It's kind of a problematic loose end. We see all the players involved in making a lunar election happen, who's on board, who's skeptical, as well as how the lunar people themselves respond to the announcement. And we get a look at all of the diplomacy and politics at play as Cinder and her advisors work to repair their relationship with the Earthens and build trust between those two populaces. This felt a lot like catching up with old friends. To me, the characters who had already gotten a decent dose of fleshing out were present, but they didn't steal the show, which I like. Instead, people like Aiko and, to a lesser extent, Wolf take center stage, which is really nice to me since they didn't get as much character development in the books, and we get that opportunity now. We watch Aiko wrestle with her humanity, or lack thereof, being an android, as she struggles with her doubts about feeling intense emotions because she's Aiko and she loves the people around her. But at the same time, she also is wondering how genuine can these feelings be if she herself is not actually human? Like, talk about an identity crisis. Wolf, meanwhile, is coming to terms with the physical realities of his new mutated form. Remember? That happened. He's more like a werewolf now. And he's also wondering what that means for his relationship with Scarlet. We don't get a lot from them until book 2, but then we do get a lot of them, and that makes me happy. I really like Wolf and Scarlet. Also, there's an attempted coup by a bunch of those wolf hybrid soldiers who were left on Earth, who now hold Cinder personally responsible for what Levana and her scientists did to them. So, that's a thing. I feel like the new medium of using graphic novels worked really well for these characters and for the fairly physical humor and comedic timing that I personally always feel like is present in Marissa Meyer's writing. If you thought the characters were the best part of a series, maybe wanted a bit more exposition than what the ending gave you, definitely check these out. Even if you don't read graphic novels, honestly, this could be a pretty solid gateway to that medium, I think. Next, we'll talk about Antihero. This was written by Katie Carius-Quinn and Demetria Lunetta, and it's illustrated by Maka Gill. This is a superhero graphic novel that was put out by DC Comics, and it targets middle school readers specifically. Our dual protagonists are 13-year-old Piper Pajero and Sloane McBrute, who could not be more different. I probably just pronounced Pajero wrong. Pajaro? Pajaro? It's the Spanish word for bird, that's relevant. Piper is sunny and enthusiastic and wears her emotions right out in the open. She has super strength and she's been trying to use that to make a name for herself in town as a new superhero. The problem is she's a little bit of a bull in a china shop, and she has this tendency to do so much damage when she's trying to do good that local law enforcement, they kind of think she's a villain, and they've maybe nicknamed her the Wrecking Ball. Sloane, on the other hand, is much more reserved and spends a whole lot of time in her head. She's super smart, and I literally mean super. Her brain processes information and solves problems faster than anyone else can. She also retains information at an incredibly high level, and so she's always using these traits to plan 10 steps ahead so she can make the most strategic decisions possible. Sloane actually is a villain, and she doesn't feel like she has any other options. She's basically being blackmailed by her supervillain grandfather, whose influence in town ensures that Sloane's mom isn't able to keep a job, and so they're struggling to make ends meet. When both girls get mixed up with a piece of technology that Piper's scientist parents developed, they literally get mixed up, like Freaky Friday style. They have to work together, each using a very different skill set than they're used to in order to avoid suspicion, not wreck each other's lives, and try to keep the bad guy from, winning. This was cute. It was very PG, but with enough food for thought about the things that we can learn from others and the ways that we tend to pigeonhole ourselves, often unfairly, based on the things that we think we're good at and the things that we think we're bad at. Piper is Latinx, and we see little bits of her culture, see the fact that her last name is the Spanish word for parrot, which is relevant to her superhero identity. And we especially see elements of her culture when she's at home with her abuela, who is basically raising her. Sloane, as I mentioned, is being raised by a single mother, and her family struggles a lot financially, so we have some low SES representation as well. The two writers each took ownership of one of the two main characters, and each handled the writing from their chosen characters' perspectives, which I always think is a cool approach when there's two authors, and it does come across pretty well in the story. I also enjoyed the art style. It's colorful and restrained in equal measure, depending on which character we're with, and you can really see the two protagonists' personalities shine through and how they're illustrated, and that also kind of evolves as we go and they learn from each other. I picked this up from Hoopla, courtesy of my library, so check that out if you're interested in giving this a read. Next, we're going to talk about Volume 1 of the comic series Moonstruck by Grace Ellis and illustrated by Shay Beagle and Kate Leth. Let's start with just the first two issues, okay? These were solid gold. This is a queer, racially inclusive, body-positive comic series centered on a female-female romance that takes place in a college town populated by all sorts of magical and mythical beings. Are you sold yet? Because I was. I was head over heels by page 5. This was everything. It was adorable. It was stunning. It was perfect. I cannot convey how joyously happy I was as I started reading this. I was so glad I found it on Hoopla on a whim. It was just, I loved it. I really loved it from the start. There was every kind of representation that I could think of. There was chemistry between all of the characters, romantic or otherwise. The art style was, oh my god, look at this stuff. It is absolutely gorgeous. It makes me happy just looking at it. We have this sweet, brand new baby romance between our sincere, shy protagonist and her love interest, who is clearly smitten with her. I also read some self-acceptance struggles in the protagonist, who doesn't seem quite comfortable with the fact that she's a werewolf, which was really relatable. Not the werewolf part, you know what I mean. Also, there is a non-binary centaur named Chet who I want to be friends with in real life. I swear to God, this character's personality has to be modeled after Jonathan Van Ness. I just pictured him the entire time with how he interacts with people in the world, and who I also want to be friends with, by the way. You get the point. It was amazing. 5 stars right off the bat. I was sold. I'm here. Give it. I want to read it all. Bring it on. All of it. Give me all of it. And then we hit somewhere around issue 3 into issue 4, and the writing just, this is the story, okay? This is the plot. And we're chugging, it's all good, and then we hit issue 3, and then this feels really mean to phrase all of this in this manner, but I was just so thrown and so disappointed and so frustrated. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, the plot, for one thing, which had totally grabbed me earlier on, stopped making sense. The characters made decisions that I didn't understand, that they served no logical purpose except theoretically to advance the plot, but they didn't do that. Like, they made decisions in such a way that didn't make sense given the problems they were up against. But fine, whatever. I can forgive a little bit of that. But what personally I found really upsetting, because it was so unexpected and I felt like I had been kind of led on a little bit, was that the love interest became horrible. And I don't just mean she was a jerk. I mean, by the end of the volume, she was flat out emotionally abusive. And the way that she and the main character interacted was just this terrible, cyclical, toxic, trigger-filled mess that was straight out of a textbook about abusive and unhealthy relationships. So that sucked. But on the plus side, the artwork is still gorgeous. I'm going to give Volume 2 a shot because it's also available on Hoopla, and I'm truly, genuinely hoping that this was a fluke. Or maybe there will be some way of explaining the things that I found really frustrating, like maybe the love interest, maybe her personality change all of a sudden has to do with the fact that she's also a werewolf. I don't know. If that is what's going on, I don't know that I can forgive it, honestly, because it's not couched in a positive way. Regardless, if you struggle with depictions of toxic relationships, maybe skip this one. I'm tired now. But that's okay, because we are ending on a high note. The last read I'll discuss here was The Tea Dragon Society, which, thank God I'm ending on this and not Moonstruck. Good job, me. This is a short, sweet set of comics that was originally published online by Katie O'Neill. We follow Greta, an apprenticing blacksmith who encounters a little ass dragon and is taking the dragon home, and in doing so meets her owner, who runs the local tea shop. Greta gets to know him and his partner, and they wind up teaching her the ancient but dying art of caring for tea dragons. These are tiny little baby dragons. Well, they're not babies. They're actually really old. They're tiny little dragons whose horns and antlers and such sprout leaves that can be brewed into a magical tea. Do not read this looking for a plot. Let's just put that out there. There is a plot, technically, but it's very low-key. Read this because it is delightful. Read it for tiny little dragons who are proud and proper and bond with their caretakers for life and have different species that correspond with different types of tea. Read it because it is gentle and lovely, and it quietly speaks to topics of tradition and memory and preserving lost arts and lifelong companionship. Read this because it's diverse. Our protagonist is a person of color. It features a loving, devoted male-male partnership, one member of which uses a wheelchair. It's beautiful in every sense of the word, including the diverse representation of characters that we get to spend time with. Read this because Moonstruck made you mad, and now you just want to go to a lovely place with a soothing atmosphere where you can imagine what it would be like to have a tiny, tiny dragon as a lifelong companion. I want a tea dragon now, and I don't even drink tea. I liked this. You should read it. It's on Hoopla. That, my friends, covers the graphic novels in the first part of the comics that I read in July. I have 2 more parts to this wrap-up coming, including contemporary novels, and 1 myth retelling, and 1 middle grade paranormal, because I couldn't fit it. I have more novels, as well as the rest of the comics I read, and what has quickly snowballed into a newfound manga habit. If you want to hear about those, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Why am I pointing this guy? That would be that way, right? Subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up for me, and I will once again leave you with a question. Do you read comics or graphic novels or manga, anything graphics based? If you do, what are your favorites? Tell me down below in the comments so I can add them to my TBR. Please and thank you. Thanks so much for hanging out. I hope you read something great today, and I will see you when